Reverend D. Alexander Bullock, the Executive Director of the Change Agent Consortium, which you can find over at facebook.com/ActionCAC, as in Action Change Agent Consortium, Action CAC, is on the line with us. Reverend Bullock, welcome back.
Tom, it's so good to be on the show again. Thank you.
It is great talking with you. I read this article this morning about how in Flint, Michigan, just north of Detroit, the people are being poisoned, that the level of lead in the water, when it exceeds 5,000 parts per million, causes that water to be considered toxic waste. I mean, literally toxic waste. And there are many homes, many communities, many people in Flint, particularly in the largely poor parts and people of color living there, parts of Flint, where the lead levels in the water are over 10,000 parts per million. What the hell is going on there, sir? Forgive my expletive, Pastor.
You know what? All is forgiven.
That's
precisely the question. What's going on in the state of Michigan? What's going on in the city of Flint, where you have residents that are drinking poisonous water? We all know what lead does to the brain. We know how it affects young people. We know how it affects adults. We know that it is poisonous, and we also know that the water has been contaminated for some time, and activists across the state of Michigan have been calling on Governor Snyder to do something about the situation for at least 10 to 24 months. But again, when emergency managers, one man has all the power and makes a decision to switch the city of Flint from the Detroit water system, where the water's fine, to the Flint River, where the water is poisonous, where there's no democracy, no accountability, there's no conversation, no study, no research, just a swift decision made to balance the budget, and so that profits are put over people. This is exactly what we knew was going to happen. And at this point, what we're saying is we've got to put the people first. We've got to put the children first, and enough is enough. The governor should use his executive authority to immediately switch the city of Flint back onto the Detroit water system so that folks in Flint can have safe drinking water. Right. But for some reason, the governor doesn't want to do that.
I also read in this article that the average water bill in Flint was something like $140. Was that, did I read that right? Is that per month or per year?
That's per month. Flint, Highland Park, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, all on that I-75 corridor. These cities have some of the highest water bills in the nation.
Why?
Some of the poorest communities, highest water bills. You ask why? Well, because there are infrastructure projects and water expansion projects where cities in the center are being used to subsidize the expansion of water infrastructure into the suburbs. And so you have the poorest communities actually paying the bill for suburban communities to have water services. And so what we're saying in Flint is not only are these folks drinking poison water, but they're paying a whole lot of money for it.
Right. So, now let me just see if I have this right. We're talking with Reverend D. Alexander Bullock of the Change Agent Consortium, the executive director, facebook.com/ActionCAC. The city of Detroit and the city of Flint were both under control of emergency managers. The governor, Rick Snyder, in Michigan said, no more democracy in these two cities. Even though you elected your own mayor and city councilors, I'm taking away from them all power to run the cities. I'm going to run the cities, or I'm going to put a lawyer, a corporate lackey in charge of these cities. And then, so the guy who was put in charge of Flint said, we're paying a lot of money to Detroit, which is, by the way, helping out Detroit from their terrible financial problem. And by paying that money to Detroit, we're diminishing the rationale for us to continue to control Detroit's finances because we're making Detroit economically more healthy. We're paying a lot of money to Detroit for good water. So let's, screw Detroit. Let's just get, water out of the Flint River. Do I have that right?
You've got it completely right. The emergency manager says, look, we're paying too much money to Detroit where the water is fine. We can actually balance our budget if we come off of the Detroit water system, which then Detroit loses a customer. Flint comes off of Detroit's water, and now they're getting their water from the Flint River, which is poisonous. But the emergency manager of Flint also told Flint residents that if we come off of Detroit, your water bill is going to be lower because we'll go on to a new system. And so they get poisoned water, but they actually get a higher bill. And then in all of this, what's very, very strange is that the state of Michigan has been denying for months that the water is bad. It was only until last Friday that the governor finally said publicly, maybe we made a mistake. Now, there's a GM plant in Flint that paid $2 million or so to switch back to the Detroit water supply because the water was destroying the parts in the GM plant.
Right. My understanding is that the way that this lead is getting in the water is that the Flint River water is highly corrosive, highly acidic, and it's leaching lead out of old lead-lined or lead-sealed joints in the water system, and that's how the lead's getting in there. Do I have that right?
You got that right.
And that's why that water was ruining the parts in the car factory because it's so corrosive.
You've got it exactly right. And so, look, folks at the state level have known about this for months. And now, there was a Virginia Tech study that recently has come out. We've got lead in the water. We've got high bacteria in the water. We've got a move made by an emergency manager that required the authorization of the governor of the state of Michigan. And so people have to really understand that Rick Snyder single-handedly is responsible for any child or person in the city of Flint that has lead in their water and could make the unilateral decision to switch back to the Detroit supply, but because profit is more important than people, will not do it.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. The Reverend D. Alexander Bullock, you can read it all about it on the Change Agent Consortium page over on Facebook, facebook.com/actioncac. And let's see. Yeah, okay. Reverend Bullock, thank you so much for being with us today. Great talking.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
Oh, here's the Twitter feed. I was looking for this. It's at ActionCAC and at D. Alexander B.